So I believe that most spiritual seekers are on a never-ending journey because of this little misconception. Some people just believe that awakening is all about stopping the suffering, that it's about ending the suffering. And in a way, that's actually true, but you know what people do is they meditate and they do spiritual practices. They ask themselves, who am I, who am I, who am I? And they kind of wait. It's like a little tension that says, I'm still waiting for this moment, you know, when suffering ends. And then I will feel good. But that's not what you're supposed to do. At least that's not what you're supposed to do if you're asking me. The actual awakening is the cessation of the tension that says, I want to stop suffering. Because, you know, there is suffering, but that suffering, you can look at it as an impersonal arising, that it's just there in your awareness. The real problem is this place, this entity that says, I want to get rid of suffering. That's the reason why the suffering is actually still there. So you don't get rid of the suffering, you get rid of the cause of the suffering. And the cause of the suffering is this entity that says, I want to get rid of suffering. And it's not that obvious to locate, to find that entity, but it's basically who you think you are. As there is a part in you, the ego, that is trying to practice. And practices are there to change something that is. So something that is, you practice it and you change it, therefore. But spiritual practice is not something, you know, it's not a tool to change something. It's not a tool for you to get rid of suffering. It's a tool for you to accept what is. So you even accept this suffering that is present right now. And in that moment, as you are allowing the suffering that is present right now, the ego simply disappears. And therefore, there's nobody trying to, you know, there's nobody that's touching the suffering, but there is just an open space in which suffering is allowed, but it's no longer your problem. So real meditation to me actually is also not something that one is practicing, but real meditation is a state in which you are being carried, in which you are simply surrendering your whole life to, it doesn't matter to what you surrender your life. You can say, I'm surrendering my life to God, the universe, Allah. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the important part is that there is a surrendering that's happening, and that surrendering shouldn't come from an I. It can even help if you say, I'm surrendering. But then after that, you don't identify anymore with this I that says, I'm surrendering, I'm allowing, I'm no longer fighting. And then after that, you will see that the suffering will be still there, but the one that's trying to change it is no longer there. So, and you will see that by no longer touching the suffering, by no longer touching whatever's going on in your psyche, it can find its own natural way to become still and peaceful. So there's going to be a purification. There's going to be a release. You're going to be cleansed from the inside out. So all of your emotions that you have held down are going to come up, of course, because the reason why they didn't come already is because there was this person, this entity that says, I want to change it. I want to do something with it. I have to let it go. Letting go in the sense that the I is doing the letting go. So suffering, the sensation of feeling, the experience of suffering is not the real problem. The real problem is the one that's trying to change something about it. And that's the real trick. That's the real thing that you have to figure out. So, and the easiest way, of course, is just to ask yourself, who am I? And then after you've asked yourself, who am I? You're not supposed to repeat this as like a mantra. But you're supposed to recognize that the one that seems to be the one who's carrying its own life is an illusion. So there is a shift that's happening. First, you feel like you're the one that's living, so it feels like you're carrying the burden of being the one that's suffering, and you have to solve it somehow by doing the spiritual practice in the right way, so that then the gods choose you and bless you. But it doesn't work like that. You shift from that to a state of feeling like you are being carried, and actually that's what's already happening right now. As you're watching this video, you can notice how you can notice how you are already being carried right now by life, if you're not putting in any effort to keep it like that. If you don't put in any effort to do anything, you will see that life is still carrying you. Your heart is still beating, you're still breathing, the thoughts are still appearing and disappearing, emotions are still there, life is still happening, but there is no effort on your part. And when there is no effort, then everything is allowed to be as it is, and in this allowance there is an arising of real love that says, I'm even welcoming the pain, because that's what's important, to welcome the pain, because then you're going to be purified, and then you can actually enjoy life, because you're not supposed to heal your trauma, you're supposed to let it go. Healing the trauma implies that you spend time on figuring out why you are traumatized, why you feel like that. Then you have an intellectual knowledge on why you are so sad, but then you are still sad. It's just the difference is that you now know why you are sad. But it would be much better to just not be sad anymore. And you cannot change it by doing something with your ego. You cannot fight the sadness. You have to be sad without fighting the sadness in this in this space of allowance, and then it's going to be purified out of you. Not always. It's not that you can just sit down and purify everything away from you. Of course, if the life force energy knows that you are supposed to feel like that because it's going to serve you in the future, it knows what it's doing, you don't have to question it, then you're still going to feel like that, but then later in life you will understand why. So you're not just going to be blissed out all the time, but the thing that is going to give you peace, actual peace, is when this entity that feels like I'm the controller, I'm the one that's carrying the burden of life, is no longer fighting. And then you'll see the one that's carrying the burden of life is life itself, it's not you. And that's the relief, that's the end of suffering. After that, the sensation, the physical sensation, the emotional sensation of being of there being suffering can still remain, but it will just like karma that's running out. You just watch it and you allow it. And if you have to, if you have an intense emotion about it, that's okay, just don't identify with it. So when that sounds like, okay, it's easier said than done, but what helped me to get to this place is actually very simple. First, I was disentangling myself from my story, from my thoughts, by becoming aware of objects around me. So what happens when you are just walking around? And normally, if you wouldn't be interested in spirituality at all, then you would just be lost in your mind. And that means that you're identified with the ego, and that ego is constantly trying to defend itself, trying to prove that it's worthy, trying, you know what the ego is doing all the time, and people are stuck in that. So the first thing that I did, and I'm suggesting that maybe you do the same if you're struggling with letting go of the mind, that you don't try to immediately fall back into the subject and just let it all go if that's if that feels impossible, but first become aware of objects. And because when you're totally aware of an object, and when I say object, it could even be a noise. So I like to do sound meditation when I'm just sitting somewhere and I'm hearing birds. I like the sound of birds. And I'm just totally attentive, I'm listening. And in that listening, there is no me, because there is just the sound, and there is awareness of the sound, but there is no story about me. And that will show you that the one that's aware of the bird is not really the story, the self that has formed a story about itself, but it's just pure listening. That's how you can become free of it. But when that becomes clear, that essentially you're not your story, you're not your opinions, you're not, you know, the person, but you are the listening. you're listening, that's when you can actually relax that attention again and fall back into yourself again. But then you will not be so entangled in the thoughts anymore. And even if thoughts arise, it's like, okay. So first it's like there's a part in you that it feels like there's like an entity inside of your head that can stretch its attention towards an object, to a sound, to a sensation, to something you see. And when it becomes clear, okay, I'm free, I can be aware of the present moment and I'm not my thoughts, then you can relax that attention again so it falls back onto itself. So the subject is aware of the subject, or is not aware of it like an object, but it's just being itself. That's when all its power, or the power of the ego, is just kind of crumbling, because when the awareness is just resting in itself and it's no longer controlling anything, because as I said, it's relaxing its own attention, that it's no longer so fixated on the thoughts, because that's also a state of being delusionally attentive on thoughts. So you come back and you just relax in your being, as your being, and then there's just presence, and in this presence there is just experience. So you're no longer identified with a I person, but you are, there's no question anymore of being identified, but there is the best way I could describe it is by saying that it's just an allowance. There's a being that is allowing the experience, and it's all one. But basically it's all about surrendering. So yeah, what you can do is be aware of object first, to recognize that you are not the thoughts, but you are the awareness. Then when you recognize that you are the awareness, then you even let go of the effort to be aware of something, and then you are just aware. But being just aware is not an effort, it's just you let go. Awareness lets go of the effort to be aware of something, so awareness is just itself. And in this being itself, it's just relaxing, and there is still suffering. But there is no fight against the suffering, it's no resistance anymore. It's not trying to change the suffering, and you're going to be purified. Your emotional, mental body is going to be purified. And it's not a matter of time. If you feel like that's impossible for you right now, do the thing with the object. But if you feel like I can do it, don't fight anymore right now. Just surrender right now. And you don't have to do this with the mind. It just means that when you say I surrender right now, what can happen is that there is still going to be a sensation that makes your mind flip out and say, I don't know how to handle this emotion. I don't know what to do with this emotion. But then you can just say, it's okay. It's allowed, and stay there and see what happens. And that's the thing. That's actually the part that, to me, is very interesting. I like it when very intense emotions arise. When I'm in meditation and I'm just relaxing. By the way, I'm sick a little bit, so forgive me if my voice sounds a little raspy, but when that's what I like about meditation, this especially this part, when intense emotions come up, when there's a deep pain coming from beneath, and it's just so painful, but there's no effort on my part to change it. So it's just energy that's arising, and it's so interesting, because I know that's the moment right before there is an intense sense of relief. It's like it's building up, and I'm not doing anything with it. Normally the ego would intervene and say, I don't want to have this, it's too painful. But if you can just let go and just observe, and you don't do anything about it, and you relax, there's an intense emotion, and it's building up, it's becoming more intense, and then it's coming, so it has to go. And then all of a sudden there's just like a and then there's a relief. Sometimes some tears can come, but it's just a sign that you are letting go, that there is a purification that's happening right now. And then when you go through your day, you go about your day, you do things, it's happening all, the feeling is much lighter. And that's what everybody wants. You know, that's what everybody is looking for in alcohol and cigarettes and drugs. That sense of, I can just relax. If you cannot relax as you are consuming drugs, then the drug is not that fun. So you have to learn how to let go of resistance, which is the ego.